Time for a little meadow update. We had our burn about a month ago. Right now it's end of May. We burnt this at the end of March, sorry, 2 months ago. You'll see where we're at with these plants filling in. You know, these common milkweed here, this little cluster's been here for several years. Came in on its own. And that's around knee high, at least my knee, so maybe 18 inches tall. It's pretty amazing how this is filled in and greened up. We had a week of really hot weather there, and things just completely flushed out. I come zooming through here. You can see the plants that have filled in amidst the bits of fescue beneath, but you know, the clusters of Indian grass and panic grass are probably 10 inches tall. And we come sliding through, you're going to see lots of our native forbs that are looking really robust and healthy this year. Is going to end up being just a whole ton of blooms as we get into the summer. Another interesting thing, I've had some trembling aspens that blew in here on their own, and I noticed the fire seemed to really knock them back. This one's mainly dead, a few little leaves up top. What I've noticed here just the other day, and I hadn't noticed before, but it could just because the meadow was too tall, is the amount of little suckers of the trembling aspen shooting off. You can see coming up all around it. It's going to make a little thicket or a colony here, so I don't know if those were here all along or if that's somewhat of a reaction to the fire and its way of replicating itself. You see it did knock back things like these little bits of buckthorn that were moved in here, which isn't a bad thing. They don't seem to be shooting up as much. We have other clusters elsewhere in the meadow that have really been burnt off. You know, we still spots where there's the fragrant bed straw. It's not very dominant in this field, and I did spray after the burn, and the spots where I sprayed, or at least sprayed somewhat consistently, it's been knocked back a fair bit more, as well as the fescue. I think next year when it first greens up, I'll be a little more proactive with some of the spraying. But you'll see the amount. It's basically all over the place. These groups of Monarda. We have it, just big plants all over the place. Number of different asters, different goldenrods. We have white beard tongue. We find some of those in here, and you'll see a spot like this with the groups of our native prairie grasses, all those clump formers. They've been liking the heat that we've seen the last couple weeks. It's really bounced things up. Throughout the meadow here is really chock full of Virginia mountain mint. We've always had it in as part of the seed mixture, and I think you know, it drops a ton of seed like any mint and is quite rapid to spread. So you're looking around, we see it all over the place here, which would be real nice. It blooms for a long time in the summer and is quite the pollinator plant. Little white flowers are just buzzing, so that is a fairly consistent carpet of that throughout here. And we had, we'll work our way over to, I did have in the seed mixture, which was around a decade ago, some wild lupin. I've seen a few over the years. Sometimes they're buried in the tall dead grasses, so we don't have they don't stand out as much. But I don't remember this one being out here in the middle of the field, but it looks nice. Be okay if it can drop some seed and move around. I think there's one other one elsewhere, and we can walk over this way. You know, some of these burnt off. We did have some other shrubs. These might have been some nannyberries that were planted in here. Yeah, so they're sprouting up from down at the bottom, so they're able to survive the fire. Just knocks back their growth, which is what helps to maintain a prairie or meadow system as a prairie, so that it burns off the woody stuff, so it stays the herbaceous layer as the dominant vegetation type. See another trembling aspen here with no leaves on it, but really lots of little suckers and offshoots around it, so we need to see how they progress. You know, as a pioneer species, it's meant to move out into a field, and fields in southern Ontario are really desiring to become forests, so I prefer to burn it off and keep this area as a meadow, but some additional forest clusters here are not a bad thing. You see a spot like this, just full of the native forbs. We have sky blue asters, are very dense throughout here. We also have a heath aster with those sort of dainty white flowers that will be showing up. You know, that section is predominantly native vegetation and going to be very showy later this year. You can see through here where I did some more extensive spraying, we don't have as much of that fescue carpet. Still a bit here and there, but we're mainly the native grasses and forbs in here. And we'll find a spot where I didn't spray as well, and you'll see more larger groupings of the fescue here. It's a little bit spotty, so it got knocked back, all that fine leaf fescue. We'll have bigger areas where I didn't touch at all, and it's much more of a dense carpet, like here. We'll put that on the list for next year to continue trying to get it out of the field a bit. It'll be interesting on this side of the path that didn't get burned. You know, and it has the real full coverage of fescue. You see the native plants are not nearly as full in here. They're sort of speckled through. The fescue really takes over to a degree, you know, until we get to spots where there's not as much of it, and then we're full of the asters. So it's sort of spread off of our paths, and the fescue can slow down the spread of the desirable species. We'll likely do some more spraying in the next spring of this. As we come up this way, I did some spraying. You can see where the fescue is less dense through this area. We'll give more opportunity for the native plants to grow and do their thing. And from this point over here, we'll have a really good view later in the season when this meadow gets into full bloom. We have big expanses of tall grass on this little hill. And as things fill in, we'll come back through for a look from this spot.